want something, the first door that you're going to try to open will be closed. Always. But it also means that it's not because the door is closed that you can't open it. Or you cannot choose another door. And if it's not the door, it's a window. And if it's not the window, it's the basement. If it's not the basement, it's the chimney.
Welcome to or welcome back to Fashion Career Stories. My name is Lucas Silva Edwards. I am a career strategist and executive coach with more than 10 years of experience in the fashion and luxury industry here in Paris, France. My role is to help you design a successful life and career in one of the most glamorous industries on the planet, but also one of the most competitive. For that reason, I have interviewed fashion professionals at different stages of their career in order to decode the best practices, tactics, and strategies. My hope for you is that you will find in this conversation some inspiration and insights that will help you build your professional journey in the world of fashion and luxury. Today, I have the pleasure to receive my good friend and schoolmate, Habib GUABINTANI. This episode is very special to me for several reasons. First, because you are in for a treat for this episode. Habib is a skilled storyteller and a craftsman of the cliffhanger. By the end of this episode, you will understand how he has developed that talent. So, stay with us. Second, Habib is probably the most resilient, relentless, and hardworking person I know. I'm not afraid to say that I often sing WWHT. What would Habib do? Third, like me, Habib is not an insider. He comes from immigrant parents, he had to study hard to get into fashion school, and we both started our career in retail. The main difference comes from our dreams and goals. But what were Habib's dreams? At 25, he set his mind and decided that he will become the Dior Men Store Director on the 5th Avenue in New York City by 30 years old. Nothing less than that. I don't want to spoil anything, but I can tell you one thing. It was not a straight line and nothing was given to Habib. And with no further ado, please enjoy the American dream of Habib GUABINTANI. By the end of this episode, you enjoyed this conversation and you want to support the podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. This is the most efficient way to help us grow and entice people to listen to the show. So don't be shy, hit those 5 stars and show us your love in the comment section. Hi Habib, how are you?
Hey Lucas.
So I'm so happy to have you. It's been a long time I wanted to have this conversation with you. Not only because I've known you for a long time, because and for those who listen to you, we have known Habib since we are in the same school. But also because when I think about you and your story, the two key words that kind of come to mind are driven and work ethic. And we will go on that more specifically, but just to have a little bit of context of who you are. So you are French born, but you've done a lot of your career in the luxury sector, especially at Dior Men. And at the height, let's say, of your career, you were like the Dior Men director in New York, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to kind of go back to all of that journey and especially understand when fashion entered in your life and why you decided to start working in the fashion industry in the first place.
Wow. Thanks for the introduction. That's I like the two keywords that you actually gave because it's true, and I think that defines most likely who I am. Driven, it's definitely one of the keywords, and work ethic. I would say just integrity in general, not only for work, but even in my relationships, friendships, love relationships, and even anyone that I meet that I don't know, I try always to stay very true to myself and try to bring as much respect as I can. So it's thanks for for kind of picking up these two keywords, and I'm going to keep them. In terms of career, I remember I always wanted to go to the US, and it is something that when I was already in college at the university in Paris, and I was like, okay, how am I going to do that? What do I like to be able to move? And I remember I was saying to myself when I was a teenager, like at 15 years old, I'm going to move to the US and I'm going to change my life. And when I'm going to make it there, I'm going to come back to France and just make sure that my family make it. But then I understood that 15 was a little too early and too young. But I had always that in mind. And then I started kind of understanding what I liked in my day to day. And I was always kind of seduced by the world of fashion. I think it comes from my mother. My mother is a hairstylist, and she actually had the chance when she was a student in Paris to kind of help all the fashion models for Adrien Alaya back then. So she kind of he's a Tunisian guy. My mother is Tunisian. So Tunisian for her was kind of an honor to be part of that project and being able to help all the staff to kind of prep the models for the red carpet with the catalog for Adrien Alaya. And I think it comes from there subconsciously. And I remember when I was applying to the school, the French Fashion Institute, it is a story that I actually shared. And that was that moved a little bit everyone. And I always wanted to be part of an industry that makes me dream. I'm a daydreamer. It is my personality, and I think it comes from it. So having that sense of beauty, no matter which craft it is something that inspires me. So I ended up discovering that school, and the story of how that school actually has been created through a love story of a manager and a fashion designer. I just felt that was it. That was the school that I wanted to be part of, and I think that was the best decision in my life. I was able to actually, also I was accepted in a finance master degree, which was one of the most prestigious one back then at my university, but I didn't want to accept that. I was like, okay, you can get there and just go in finance, but you can also just follow your passion and live it. And if it's not working for you, then you can always go back to a classic academic or graduate in finance and just get back to that. You can always go back to something that is really practical. And that's how I made it. I went to that school, and I think that school really changed my life. Why? Just because I went there, I didn't know what I really wanted to do. Back then, I wanted to open my own brand. I always had that in mind. And the first day, we had the chance of meeting the CEO of Dior. I don't know if you remember. He actually opened that year program by presenting the house of Dior, and he was talking about how he made it through Dior through retail, and how retail was the key factor of success. And even if you are in charge of the whole brand worldwide, if you don't have enough understanding on what's happening in the store, you can't make it. So I had my answer the first day. I was like, okay, this is the brand that a guy is inspiring me through his drive, and he's telling me literally that if I want to make it and be able to make good decisions, you got to understand the world of retail. And that was it. So I took that as my, it was the first day, literally. And I remember I went home and I was shaking. I was like, this is it. Now I know what I need to do. And the drive started there, right? So I was, okay, let's focus on retail. And then I had the chance through the same school to be mentored by basically a former student, and we were supposed to meet every mentor at a certain cocktail. That was the first cocktail in October. It was on October, I think, and I was looking for my mentor and I couldn't find him, and I got disappointed. I was like, I went to the head of the program, and I was like, where is my mentor? Everyone has his mentor. Where is mine? And I was so disappointed. It's like, of course he's not gonna be here. I'm like, why? Like, he's living in Las Vegas. He's in charge of the store. He's the Dior store director in Las Vegas. And I was like, whoa, that's a sign. So the guy is literally in retail at Dior and he lives in the US. And I took it as a sign and I was like, okay, I got to meet that guy. We met through Skype. I told him, how did you do it? And how can I do it? And it took me 5 years. I started as a training manager.
Before we go a little bit further, I just wanted to kind of rewind a little bit because I know where we're going. So I just want to take the time to highlight few things there. But what I love about what you said all along your story is you feel that passion is one of the main drivers in your life. Even the story you told at the school about your mom, the fact that you chose to go to fashion instead of following maybe more a rational path with finance, the energy that you felt from the CEO of Dior, kind of make you think about like, okay, how can I fuel that passion, but in a rational way? So there is always that combination, at least in my understanding, that combination that passion leads you, but then there is that drive, that rational way of thinking, say, okay, what are the steps to do that? And how can I do that as fast as possible to get where I want to go?
I don't think you really pay attention to the speed, but it's much more about how focused you are. Let me just light up the room so you have a better idea. But yeah, it's much more about how focused you are. That has a price. So obviously, if you give 100% of your time, dedicated to a certain goal, you gotta hit it faster than others, just because you're fully dedicated to it, right? It has their obviously good points, and there's also those downsides, which are you kind of sacrifice a lot to be able to do that. But I'm really, I would say, proud of having that luck, the drive that comes from a superior force that gives me that dedication to, no matter what's going on, just keep following your passion. And obviously I always had a result in mind. Now it's changing a little more since I'm going a little older, but the process, I love the process. It wasn't easy, but I love the process. And to just kind of jump on what you said, I had the chance through IFM, the French Fashion Institute, to meet other CEOs. I had the opportunity to meet the head of Chanel. Remember, the head of Hermes. But Sydney had that energy and that drive that connected with me. And that's why I was like, this is the brand. And I choose that brand because of that guy. And I think that says a lot. We get inspired by energy and by values and principles. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it. But that was also the main reason. I believe that when you have something in mind and you just put it out there and you are aware of the signs that the universe, or however you want to call it, gives you, you can go very, very far and you can make anything happen.
Yeah, where that mindset come from? Because even when you were at school, I remember you used to work in an airport, making money on the side. I remember that, yeah, all of that about you. And I wonder, does it come from your family? Does it come from, I don't know, life challenges? Where does it come from, according to you?
It certainly comes from my background. I mean, I didn't have, even though I had loving parents, I grew up with my mother, and I had to work to make a living. So once I had my high school diploma and I was 17, that was the first day that I started working. And the idea is to be able to be independent and really have control of my life, and also help my mother, which at that time, my mother is really young. She had my brother when she was only 17, and she had me when she was 23. So if you can imagine, when I was 15, she was 35. So it's my age, and she already had 3 kids. So I think the passion and the drive comes from her. She basically sacrificed her youth to make sure we had the best education, and she was investing on us. I had the chance to have a personal teacher, and she was paying that teacher to help me really understand the core values and those work ethic that you were talking about. And I had that when I was 10. So it's all a process, and she invested everything. She sacrificed everything to make sure we have all the tools to make it happen. So we had that sense of responsibility pretty soon, pretty early, and I think that was my drive until now. Until now.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So that sense of responsibility, autonomy, being in charge of your life, that's something. Yeah, I really see in everything that you have done. So let's go back to where we stopped earlier. So you start talking to your mentor, and you start thinking, okay, how can I be in charge of my future life? So you were asking him, how can I basically do it too in the US? So how that conversation goes, and what happened next?
Yeah. So at that point, I understood that I wanted to work in retail. I wanted to be part of the house of Dior, and I had a chance to really understand how can I. I found a way to basically move to the US through a company. That was the most interesting information at that time. I was like, okay, so now I can actually make it with a company. So I had that conversation with him, and I was like, okay, how's retail? And he's like, retail is the best. And he's a retailer, so he sold it so well. And then I was like, how's Dior? He's like, Dior, it's one of the best companies. It's the excellence, it's the best school of retail. Okay, and how's the US? Like, I don't need to tell you. We already know how good is the US. So once I understood that, I was like, okay, now I don't want to wait until the end of my program, which was 12 years, 12 months program. I was like, okay, I cannot wait a year to find out how retail is. So how can I make it now? How can I start understanding the world of retail? And since I always worked in parallel of my studies. It was like, okay, this is my mentor. He's the one who basically taught me everything in retail, and I'm gonna put you in contact with him. I'm gonna introduce you to him. Do your interview and try to find a way to work only, even if it's only Saturdays, work. And that's how I met the store director, which was in charge of the men's department at Avenue Montaigne back then, and he was one of the tenor in the luxury industry. He's still actually one of the best retail manager, and he has that passion and that ethic. And I worked with him. He gave me a hard time to hire me because he wanted to make sure that I own it, which was one of the lesson. And after 3 interviews, I was able to basically start working at Dior every Saturdays and during the holidays. And I was doing that during my program. And in order to do that, I had to give up my job at the airport. So I was making 10 times more at the airport. But it was for me a way to basically I paid for my practical training because I saw it as a training. I hated it for the first 6 months, retail, and I think he made that on purpose because he didn't want to make it easy for me. And since I have always that pride that comes from my DNA, I guess, he wanted to test it out, and that helped me actually build up such a resilience that then when I went back after my 6 month contract as a seller, as a sales associate, I was able to basically work as a training manager, which is a program offered by Dior for those who basically has a strong or a business school master degree or a certain level
Yeah,
grad-
potential. Yeah, somebody
and,
who has potential. Yeah.
and those who basically will be the future executives of the brand. And since the French Fashion Institute is part of that caliber, that height and that level of academic education, I was able to apply for that program, and I was accepted.
And do you have any anecdotes, or do you remember anything that happened during those 6 months that you say, yeah, I hated it, I had a hard time? What was hard about it? What did you learn during those 6 months that you believe that made you the professional you are today?
Uh, I think the interview was already so hard. The first
Okay.
interview, when he met me, he said, I remember he was like, okay, you were a young student coming from the suburbs. Why would I hire you to basically help the biggest clients of the world in this store? Why would I hire you? And I was kind of shocked by that question because he kind of told me, based on who you are and from where you're from, why should I put you in that world? And I took that as a challenge. I was like, I can't give you an exact answer just because I'm not someone who talks. I'm someone who does. But just give me 6 hours for the first Saturday, and you will quickly understand why you need me in your team. And that was he laughed at it. That's how he took me and I remember the store was open from 10 to 7 p.m. and I was scheduled from 11 to 7 because the first hour nothing happens. But every Saturday I was there at 9:45. Open at 10. So it was like, why are you here so early? I was like, because you're telling me that with 8 hours, in order for me to be the best, if I'm strategic, if I can have another hour of sale, I can be part of the top sellers. So here I am. I will earn an hour more than the rest, and people were senior because you don't get to work in that environment in a flagship if you don't have enough experience. So for me, it was kind of okay. Let me prove you that I have the drive and I can be part of that team. And I found out that the big dogs, the big clients, comes 10 in the morning on Saturday. So I was making already a big sale before everyone comes. So that was also another strategy. Not being fast, but it's being smart again. It's trying to learn and to show him that I was driven.
Yeah.
And he loved me, and he still speaks very highly about me to his new team members, saying he always takes my example or my experience as an example.
And what would you say are the key learnings that you got from those 6 months, and that you still let's say use, or you will give to a younger person arriving to the retail world?
Um, Today we have. I remember we had that also in our class. We usually, when we do high level studies and we have a strong education, we come already with a certain ego, thinking that we are able to do anything because we have a strong academic background. But I knew, based on my story and my physique and from where I was coming from, I had to do more to prove that I can be part of it. At least that was my belief. Maybe now it's not the case anymore, but at that time, I probably had to prove to myself that I could be also part of that. So I put much pressure, but I already removed that ego. So I sacrificed a lot, but I also removed that ego. So for me, for anyone who has a goal, who has a vision, who wants to get to a certain level, remove all that ego. And if you need to start in a certain position that is not what you were expecting, but it's a way, it's a door, it's a small, maybe a tiny hole, take it, because that leads to the rest. And I remember the way for me to be able to accept all the, these treatments. I think we said in French, bisutage, when you're a new guy, when you're coming, we try to treat you a little tough to see how strong you are. And I think he did that to me. But I remember saying to myself, every time that I was seeing my manager, I was like, dude, the only difference that we have between you and me is time. Because at your age, I'm even better than you. So that was my way for me to remove the ego. I was like, okay, treat me the way you want. But at the end of the day, I was 24 back then. It was 45 already. I was like, in 20 years, I hope I have a better situation. And after 5 years, I was basically the same position that he has, but in New York. So it went well.
It went well. Yeah. What I like about what you say about removing the ego and really like no matter what kind of studies you had, any kind of diplomas, degrees, at the end of the day, when we start in a job, we always have to come with that humility that it's almost starting from the ground zero, and we have to build up all the skills, all the experience, because as you said, the people who you work with, they might not have the academic degrees, or they might have it, you don't know. But what you know for sure, they have more experience than you, in your case, 20 years. And if they are there in that position, you have a lot of things to learn from them. And so if you don't remove that ego and you think that you already know everything, you won't have that growth that you were talking about to help you find the ways to get where you want to go as fast. You don't have that focus that you were talking earlier, because you're thinking about, oh, he treated me that way, oh, I think it should be that way. It's like, no, just do the work. Focus on the task. Yeah, do the groundwork. And from there, build your skills to go where you want to go. So I think it's a really stronger advice for the new gen and for all the generations.
And there is no like typical path to make it. Some people does it and make it easier and faster.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people it takes more time, but there is no. Sometimes it's better to take your time and get there within 20 years than doing it, get there after 3 years, and then just as fast as you went up, you can also go down. So there isn't any real approach, but the only thing is, if you have a certain vision or a drive or a goal that is kind of making you alive, just keep doing it, because that, and love the process, because nothing is granted.
Yeah.
So if you can make it, and if you are able to go through a journey that can lead you to that, you already won.
Yeah, just trust the process.
Yeah.
And
everybody says that, but believe me, I'm in the middle of a new process, and I can tell you, I say that to myself every goddamn morning. Just trust the process.
Trust the process. Yeah, and talking about the process. So after the 6 months, you said you enter in the graduate program process. So
let me give you first a small story, because I'm sure you're aware of it.
Go ahead.
When I was as a sales associate, when I was still working at Dior, I was telling them, look, at the end of my program, I will need an internship, or I can actually start right away working with you, since I know the brand and I like the brand. I want to keep working as a manager in training in that program, because I already love that program, and I was aware about it. So I wanted to kind of basically apply internally for that program, but because my I would say my youth and my lack of experience, I was right away saying, hey, I want to do that program, and I wanted to do it in the US. I want to go to the US. I want to go to the US. And I was a sales associate part-time, and they wanted to give me a job with Dior, but because I couldn't stop telling them that I wanted to do that in the US, and it's two different companies, even if it's the same brand, going to the US implies a lot of a visa program. It's you got to bring something to the region there, and at my level, they don't need me. So I didn't understand that. I thought because it's a big company and someone showed that he can be good, they can believe in him and they're gonna just put him out there. But they won't spend money on a junior on something when they can take someone who already is there and just manage him and help him to get there. So they really stood quiet and they didn't say anything. And at the end of 6 months, my manager came to me and I was like, "Hey, I hope you found something because we're not gonna, renew anything with you, and there is no opportunity to go to the US." He didn't tell me that, but he made me understand that it won't happen. So I had to find an internship to kind of also validate my program, right? So at that time, we had so many companies who basically we met in order to do our internship, and I wanted to do it in retail. So there is that department store called Printemps, which at that time they were actually repositioning themselves very luxury. So they did a full strategy of scaling up, removing those first tier brands and really keep the luxury brands. So they were positioning themselves luxury. They wanted some managers as a trainee managers as well, who can help those senior manager on their floor. So some of the people who were interested in retail got those positions, and me, because I was pretty sure that I was gonna stay with Dior, I didn't really push to get there until the end. And when I applied, they were like, "Okay, we can take you as a manager, and you have a great Dior experience as a retailer, so you're gonna be great. But the only floor that we have when we need someone, it's the floor dedicated to cookware and glasses and plates." And I was like, "Wait a minute." And they were like, "Yeah, we proposed that to your class, but nobody wants it because it's not linked to fashion, and you guys studied fashion." I'm like, "Are you telling me that the only management role that I can have is to be someone who will be able to sell cookware?" And they were like, "Yeah," but they were telling me it's a big floor, it's 85 people, so it's a true school of management, and maybe you should consider it. And I removed that ego. And I was like, "Yeah." First, I didn't have the choice because that was the last thing. But at the same time, I was like, if I want to be a manager, it doesn't matter which product. You got to deal with people. So, and if there's 85 people and there's only 2 managers and you will be in charge. And I wanted to.
And how many people have you managed before 88 people?
Nobody. That was
from 0 to 88.
To 88, yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, it's a lease department, so there is a lot of brands that they have their own sales associates. But we also had Printemps sales associate, which was 25 people. But what they didn't tell me, it's the house, the cookware, and art de la table, we say in French, floor. They were actually putting all those very senior sales associates who are there it's been there forever. Some people were like almost at the edge of retiring, and they were really difficult, very difficult. So that was, again, another story, but that helped me a lot of how to manage. Because the first day I arrived there, and I was like, "Hey, I'm Habib. I'm going to be here for 6 months as a training manager." And one of the sales associate, which was also the head of the syndicat for Printemps, which is basically those who are representing the staff socially for the company. And she came to me, she said, "Look, we had a lot of trainees who came to this floor that came with an attitude, and we broke them. And we would not hesitate to break you if you don't understand that this is how it works here." And that was interesting because I felt like I was in a movie. And she literally said that, like, a lot of kids like you came and left right away, and we won't hesitate. And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not what I'm looking for. I'm here to learn from you guys." Again, humility. And how can I help? So I have a title of trainee manager, but I'm actually your associate guy. So tell me what I can do make your life easier. That's what I want to do. And they adopted me. They love me, and that's how I actually learned the first step of management, putting myself as a leader, which was basically coming with my suit, removing my suit, and opening the boxes to bring the new merchandise on the floor, and having them helping me out. Never asking them an order, but asking them for help all the time, because they were seeing me doing it. They could help me, so I kind of always try to put that human relationship before anything, and that helped me to understand management comes from relationships more than a title, which I learned afterward even more when I was in the US. But that was my first kind of school of management.
So really like leading by example and not so much leading by the title of it, like really being part of it and helping people, building those relationships, learning from them and not knowing, not especially that you know everything because of the degrees we were talking about. And so, okay, so that's
and funny, I mean, they are people who needed. I mean, I was coming from Dior, so I had a certain way of selling, which was way more elaborated than them. But I couldn't use that. They would. I mean, I can't bring even. I tried sometimes, like you can say this way or that way. They don't care. What they care about is making sure that when they go to work after 45 years, to still enjoy doing it. So I had to make them enjoy what they were doing by helping them, as I would help my mother or my grandmother. And that's how I approached it. And funny enough, after 6 months, they wanted me to stay there as a permanent, which I obviously declined, because you also need to know what you want. And I declined, and then I went back to Dior saying, hey guys, I was a sales associate. You guys, I wanted to do that training management program, but it couldn't happen. Now I had an experience as a manager. I know how it is. I want to go back, and I want to come back as a small department manager. But I didn't talk about the US because I understood within that 6 months that asking them to go to the US was too much of a requirement, and it wasn't possible. So I changed my strategy. I was like, okay, I want to do the program here in Paris. So eventually, when I learn and I become a manager or a director, you guys can put me, and you can just move me to any other region that will basically benefit from my expertise. And I speak Arabic, and I speak English, and I speak French. So I'm open to go to China if you want. I always had the US in mind, but I didn't want to say that because I knew through also talking with my mentor that wasn't an easy move. And that's why they accepted to basically hire me again as a training manager, and that changed my life, literally.
So again, you put yourself at the service of the company instead of asking them something. You say, okay, I'm here to help. How can I help? I'm going to learn from you. Even you have your game plan in the head, it didn't come into the conversation because it was not the right moment.
It's not the right moment. And I think being strategic a little bit, it's important because sometimes it can scare people by giving right away your requests or what you want, because you need to meet, it's a law of the market. You need to meet demand. They are asking for young talent who can be in Paris and help the Paris business. And if I come and like, hey guys, I'm talented, but just send me to the US. They don't need me. They're not going to put themselves on the line to send me out there. And then if I don't commit or I don't deliver, it's on them. I mean, they're not my parents to do that. And even your parents don't do that. So you got to understand what are the needs and how can I basically meet that need. And I understood that through my retail experience, through my academic background and my management experience, I would be a good and a strong candidate for a training manager program.
And so how was the training program? How long does it last? What different position did you do? Was it really different from the flagship?
Yeah, first you have another title and it feels good because then you can start learning also how to. And I had a little bit of management, so I had the chance to really the opportunity to kind of learn to start with a small, as a trainee, you assist a department manager or director. It's a 2 years program. Again, because I was very focused, I made it in 18 months, a year and a half, but it's usually a 2 years program. But the interesting part was I started as a trainee for a men's department at Galeries Lafayette, and the manager wasn't basically a previous trainee manager who got her first. She was a lady, and she got her first permanent position as a manager officially after that program as a department manager for that for men's. And I was in charge of building the business, the suiting business. And since I was coming from Dior Montaigne, which was a big, it was the number one seller in suiting due to their clientele and due to their ecosystem. A lot of businessmen, executives, they were all going to Montaigne for suiting. So the challenge was how to sell suits in a department store. So my job was to help boost that category. And I was like, okay, I know how to sell a suit. And back then, it was many years ago, they were selling average one suit a day. That was their numbers, one suit a day, which was for department store. Okay. But that was their clientele. The clientele were more into sneakers and jeans and not really into suiting. So I was like, for me, in order for me to help boost the business at my level, since I was a trainee and I come from selling, I was like, if I sell an extra suit on my own every time I'm there, or I help someone help selling a suit, so when I'm not there, they can sell, I will double the business, which I did. So basically, I was like, the first way, again, to put an impact is to put yourself into action and not teach people, but show them. So when people were trying to have a suit, since I was selling one every day, and I was putting that really that goal in mind, and I was very exigent with myself to make it happen. So when someone has a client who was kind of interested about a suit, they were right away asking me to be part of it. Like, hey, Habib, I have a client. Can you help me out? Can you assist me? So I was helping them closing that deal. So that was my first kind of impact. And then it kept going, and I moved. After 10
And what I love about what you say, it's also like the KPI that you use. You say, I'm going to help, and by helping, I'm going to double the turnover of that category, which is also another way to think. Is like, okay, I'm here to learn and help, but how can I help in a way that I'm going to have an impact on the business? Because at the end of the day, that's what the company wants. It's not only helping to put boxes in the store, in storage, or, being nice with the team.
which you have to do it.
Exactly, but you have to do it.
To trademark will be your impact into the business. Because if you don't bring any impact, then you become a support role. So if you want to be able to have an impact on your growth, on your business, you got to play with what you have. So what was the rules at that time for me? What was the tool? It was myself. And by doing it brings a certain momentum. So people start understanding it's feasible and it's not that scary. And those new trainee or just some interns who were part of the teams, or even more senior people, were like, okay, I can count on Habib if I need to close a deal. And then they were doing it on themselves, by their own, and because they were doing it on their own and they were able to also close it, then they felt that pride and they were coming to me and say, hey, you know what, I was able to do it. So my leadership skills start also growing and evolving because people were kind of excited to come and share their success with me. And that was a way then that my manager was seeing it and being like, okay, this guy, he has the drive. And I think when you have a drive, people will accept even your mistakes, because it's through mistake that you learn. And I did a lot of management mistakes by sometimes trying to do it on my own when I could have helped. But at that time, I needed to also learn, and because it was always for the business and it was always in order to make the numbers. They can go with it, they can accept it, and then little by little I started being a little more subtle in my way of managing, my way of sharing the message, the informations, and that's how I was able to write. I don't know if you. I don't want to go into detail, but right after my that experience, I went to Printemps again, but that time for Dior, and I was in the women's business, which is a much bigger business, and it was more about selling bags, and because there were no department manager in charge of that women's store, but directly the directors, which were in charge of all the concessions. So I kind of had, as a trainee, the position of a department manager, which was the position of my first boss in men's. So I had the same role, but not officially. It was unofficially, but I had a shoulder capable of doing that. And because the director was always there, was the bulk of the business, I learned a lot. So sometimes by also taking bigger responsibility sooner, and because you really show the drive, you really want to prove that you're trying to do your best. I was working crazy. I was there at 8 in the morning till 8 p.m. I'm talking about 12 hours. Sometimes when I was off, I was going there even during my day off because I wanted to make sure the business was working the way it should be. And that's all those hours. You see, at the end, when you say you went very fast, yes and no. I put the same amount of hours, but I put them in a very short frame. But I was working hard, so that's also it's a mix of luck because I was able to go to a certain boutique which was in need of a manager, and that was perfect. And at the same time, it was a sort of the drive and the trust because they saw an impact, and all of that made me through 18 months one of the very few training managers that after that program had the position of store director. I was assistant store director right after that program, when usually you take a department. And I was, again, same thing, humility. At that time, one of the position was open. He was assistant store director for the airports. And I come from the airports. So everything has also a meaning. And it was Roissy Charles de Gaulle, and they needed someone who could be okay to basically lead a business that was open from 6 in the morning till midnight. And a lot of people from Dior was like, no, I'm not going to go outside Paris to work on those crazy hours. But for me, I saw the title, I saw the role, and I had the chance to right away, after a program of 18 months, it's nothing, 18 months, it's super quick, to be able to manage store managers. Because we had 3 stores, and it was a mini network inside the airport. That was one of the most interesting.
So if I have to, in 18 months, 24 months, so you basically started from a sales associate at Dior at the flagship. Then you went to Printemps a little while. Then you come back to the Galeries Lafayette to become kind of the super sales trainee of the suit department when you double that department, that category. Then went a few months at Printemps, another department store for the women's side, when you became super fast the assistant, or at least the store manager of that part for the women. Yeah. And then you went to the airports to be in charge of several stores, at least 3 stores, with every time one director in each of them and their staff. All of that in less than 24 months.
Yeah, and it was 27 people to manage. Same thing, they were opening a new flagship on a certain terminal, and they wanted to make sure someone could help that. So help basically be profitable as fast as we could. that's business, you know. You open a new store, you put a lot of investment on it. You want to make sure someone can be there. So the store manager was in charge of there, needed support. So as a store director, as a deputy assistant store director, my first 6 months was just dedicated to that store. So my director at that time was like, Habib, I'm in charge of everything. Your mission is to make sure that store gets to the level that they need. They need to hit the numbers. And I took all my experience from Montaigne to create a clienteling strategy, which was at that time crazy. People didn't believe that clients could come back at the airport. But I figured that 20% of the clients were business class clients and premier class clients, and they travel every week, sometimes every 2 weeks or every month. So the big business was made through those clients. So if we could kind of select those clients, understand their lifestyle, connect with them, and make sure wherever they travel, we're here for them and make their life easier, we bring business. And that's how I started.
Finding the 20% that's going to bring the 80% of the revenue.
Yeah, sometimes 90%. Yeah. Because when you have a Chinese client who is the head of a gas company in China, and he comes to Europe for contracts, the wife still wants a Dior bag. So if you know that client and you know how you can make sure that when he goes back to his country, he doesn't need to stop at a shop. You just need to come, he travel wherever he wants in that airport. Even if we don't have a store physical in that terminal, I can send one of my sales with the bag, with the keypad, and just do the payments there and just give him. Sometimes we were selling at the door of the plane or on the VIP rooms. Those strategies were not installed, and because of my experience in the flagship store, we could kind of create a strategy based on clienteling, like they do in the flagship store, and that's how you bring.
Yeah, one of the things that when I hear you, that's always strike me. It's your creativity to find solutions when others only see problems or a huge challenge. You say, okay, how can I do that? And there is no limit to your creativity. Just what you say, like, okay, let's go to the terminal, let's go there. When everybody will say, no, the client should be in the store to pay. You say, why is that? And you don't hesitate to kind of re-challenge everything to find that solution. That's pretty unique skill. Does it come from any place, or did you learn that in the store?
I guess again, with now such a, when I take the whole experience back and I think about it, I think it comes from, again, where I come from in my childhood. When you don't get things easy and you got to be creative to get what you need, to find solutions. And, in order for me to be able to go to just a business school, I had to work, to pay that. And how can I be able to keep studying and working and helping? And so all of that comes from, again, you always, when you want something, keep that in mind. When you want something, the first door that you're going to try to open will be closed. Always. And that's something that I learned very, very, very soon. It's not because you want something bad that means you're going to get it. But it also means that it's not because the door is closed that you can't open it. Or you cannot choose another door. So, yeah. So, and if it's not the door, it's the window. And if it's not the window, it's the basement. If it's not the basement, it's the chimney. Whatever you have, a hole, it's like water. You want to follow if you follow the water, they find a hole. You'll for sure find a hole. So it's the same principle that I had. Everything that I did was for me in order to go to the US. So flagship store, then department stores, then airport, and then I took the flight and I went to Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, I went to Miami. So it was all for the same drive and the same focus, which was the United States.
Yeah, and I like the illustration that you give. It's about water, and water is really flexible, adaptable to whatever the environment is. So if you have to adapt, you adapt. So which door did you use to get to the US? So how did you arrive there, and how
It
was
was
your
it,
experience over there?
it was a wall. It wasn't a door. It was a safe door with many codes and access and tricks but when I was at the airport, I was assistant store director, and every year you have an interview, kind of an annual review with your manager about what you want to keep doing. And I was always putting the same thing. I want to go to Miami. I want to go to Miami. I want to go to Miami. Because I had my ex-girlfriend who used to live there at that time, so I wanted to be able to join her there. And and then after that experience, I spent a year and a half at the airport. We grew the business for 40%. We had started inviting clients to the show because those clients now became, loyal clients to our stores, and we started bringing some exotics and high jewelry pieces, and then men's, and we really had that entrepreneurial mindset that we wanted to keep growing the business at the airport, and I believed in travel retail a lot at that time, and because of that, they saw in me that business mindset, and they were opening a store in Amsterdam, and they wanted me to be in charge of it. But this is where I was like, no, I can do it as a mission, but ultimately I want to go to the US, and it's been 5 years, and it's time. And I knew that at that time they were opening a store in Miami. That was the first flagship store that they were opening in Miami. So I felt that was the right time. Because they're opening a store in Miami. I wanted to go to Miami. And if I don't try now to get there and see how I can show up, it would be complicated afterward. And if I take a position as a director in Europe, it's a 5 years role. I won't be able to move. So I'm going to add another 5 years. It was a little tricky. And this is where I kept asking to go for free, help the opening in Miami. And I know Dior used to love doing that, helping people to bring some, we call it task force. We send some people from every region to help a new big project in other region. So the teams can meet other region, and we can also bring best practices because we come from Paris, which is the headquarters. So I was like, hey, I just want to do a task force. I know you guys don't do it anymore with the US, but I just want to be there for free. And they kept saying, yes, we'll see. I was able to connect with someone through LinkedIn who used to be part of that team that were opening the Miami store. And I was like, hey, when is the exact opening? And he gave me the date, and I took some days off, a week, and I pretended that I had a wedding in Miami at that time, and I was like, hey guys, by the way, I'll be there. With or without you, I'll be there. I have a wedding. If you guys want, I would love to spend one day there just to meet the team. Then I would, how I'm passionate about Dior. And I remember one day before my departure, I gave up. Nobody wanted to do it. I had kind of an unexpected visit from my general manager from France. He came to the airport because he was traveling. Again, that's luck. I guess it's part of it. And he came and he was like, okay, how's the business, Habib? And I was talking about my business. Like, how's everything with you? Like, hey, I'm actually going to Miami tomorrow for a wedding. And I heard that there is that opening the same week. And I would love to just see how it works. How my dream is to be to the US. I want to see if at least it's really something that I really want. I want to go there just to help. And he was like, you really want to do it, huh? You don't want to give up on that. And I'm like, hey, it's not going to cost anything. I just want to try and meet the people. Maybe I'm going to hate it. Maybe I'm going to understand that it's not for me. But if I don't see it, how am I going to know? And he emailed right away the HR team there. And the next day I was able to meet them, which I did. And they love me. Obviously, I put the goal in myself. It was a women's store opening. I was like, I need to help them do a big sale. So whenever they have a big client, I'm going to help them sell the French Parisian dream and help them sell a big sale, which I did. The last day I spent 3 days with them. The last day I was able to sell a crocodile bag for $50,000, and the client was not expecting it, and because I kept staying there with them, and the team loved the fact that I was supporting them on that, and I helped them open. And then I was like, hey guys, I want to come. Just Paris doesn't want me to come, but I want to be part of your team, guys. And then it happened. So I said again to when I came back to Paris that guys, I really want to go, and I told them they have a position for me there. And after a few back and forth conversation, they were able to kind of share my resume, and they were just waiting for me, and that's how I moved to the US. Yeah, it wasn't an easy affair.
Amazing story. So again, the creativity, the drive, the focus, all of it is encompassed in that story. Yeah, and one of the things that I just wanted to highlight, it's also the English part, because you have learned, you were in Paris, then in department store, then travel retail, and you see here, at least in France, you have to learn, you have that background, but you have to learn English. How was it to be able to work in the US? Did you have to learn also to get even better at that, because it's not probably the same?
I don't know if you remember, Lucas, but when we were at school, I didn't even speak a word in English. I didn't even speak a word. So I remember it was an obstacle for me. And I knew that if I wanted to go work in the US, I had to find a way to get rid of that obstacle. So I took classes, bought a book, and I just started studying English on my own every day. And I even went to London for 3 weeks as a chef to cook salads and learn English. Again, you gotta do what you can. So I did that for 3 weeks, met people in London, started talking to ladies. That helps, because then you speak in English with them and you try to, and it's a broken English until you get more and more comfortable. Then you travel, and anytime that I had some time off, I was going to the US or London to speak. And quickly, I was able to have a conversation in French and sell in English. But when I arrived in Miami, one of my first clients was a French guy. Like, you got to work on your English, Habib. It's not going to help you if you keep talking that way. In France, maybe, but not here. Clients were okay because they're all international clients that sometimes talk even a crazier broken English than mine. But at the same time, I knew if I wanted to be inspiring and credible with my team, I had to find the right. And yeah, it's just practicing. And I wasn't afraid to be there and look ridiculous until I was able to speak properly. And until now, I still take classes. For all the reasons, but I still
amazing. Yeah, and I see, like, in terms of timing, we're arriving kind of at the end, and I want to be respectful of your time. So what happened after Miami? So that was New York?
I hated it. I hated Miami. So yeah, after 5 years going crazy to go to Miami, I hated Miami, just because I was coming from Paris with a certain standards, and very, very, very high standards. And Miami is too laid back, and people were like calling out sick because the Friday starts at nights, and I freaked out, and it was too hot for me, and I was always with a suit, and I felt like, okay, Miami wasn't the right move. And my girlfriend at that time, which used to live in Miami, had found a position in New York, and I was like, perfect. Don't come to Miami, go straight to New York. She came back to Paris and then had to go back to New York for visa situation. I was like, don't worry about me. I know it's been only 10 months that I'm in Miami, but I'm going to ask them. And luckily, the manager of the men's flagship on Fifth Avenue was moving to Barcelona with Dior. So they were looking for someone who could take over that position, and I was the perfect fit. So that's something that you can't control. It's just putting, again, your attention out there. It could have worked, it could have not. And I met the CEO, which basically was leaving the office was just above the flagship on Fifth Avenue. And he was like, I need you to be down here and do whatever you did in Avenue Montaigne, here we want to build business and suiting business. So whatever you learn from Paris, it's time to put it in place. And same thing, I was there. They were losing almost. They were down 40% business, and it was a big numbers to kind of recover. And I had 6 months to go back to at least flat compared to last year. And I had to rebuild a team, teach everyone how to sell a suit, which I did a couple of years before, and I hired some specialists, and we were able to become profitable, and I doubled the business within 2 years. But again, it's nothing happens, you see, overnight. But whatever you go through, at the end of the day, it helps, because that was my dream position. Why? Because my mentor, who used to be in Vegas when I was a student, his last position in New York was that position. He was the head of Dior Men's in Fifth Avenue. That was also something I texted him, like, hey, I made it happen. And he was proud, and I was proud. And, well, it's a great story, and I think I spent 3 years over there, and I really loved it. And yeah, I met a lot of people, and I remember that was an interesting thing, because I met a lot of actors, I met a lot of artists, and when I was at the university, I was taking drama class, and that's how I was able to go to French Fashion Institute, because I remember when I was doing was applying, they always wanted some student that had good grades, but also have a cultural life. And I was like, if I want to be a complete student, like a role model student, I have to have charity actions and some cultural stuff. So I was like, let's do drama. I love drama. That was one of my dreams back then. And thanks to the drama class, I was able to get to the French Fashion Institute. We spoke about theater for the whole interview. And I had that in mind, but then because of business, I had to also prove and make a living. But I always wanted to move to the US when I was 15 for acting. And when I arrived in the US, I kind of felt that I wanted to do acting a lot. And I was good in retail because I always took it as a stage. The first sentence that my manager said when I was at Habib GUABINTANI, he said, Habib, whatever you do outside here, it's your life. But when you get to the floor, you're on stage. This is your uniform. You have a suit. This is how you talk. This is how you express yourself. You use a certain vocabulary, and this is how you have to have certain manners. We call it savoir vivre in French. Get the right attitude, the manners. It's not you. We don't care. This is how you represent a company, a brand, an imaginary. So this is what we expect you, and I loved it because I was into a character and I think I was good at it. And I always kept that in mind, that when you're on stage, it's about performing. And I think I performed a lot, and then I met a lot of actors in New York, and one of the actors that I met, which is Jodie Smith, she's a British actress who moved to the US, and she was looking for a gift in my store, and I remember my sales associate was struggling with her, and I came to support him. I was like, hey, is everything okay? And he was like, yeah, she's looking for a gift. And I'm like, okay, who's the guy that you want to just tell me about the person that you want to offer, so I can give you something can basically match his lifestyle. And she was like, I'm looking for a gift for Colin Farrell. And I was like, oh, okay. And I know his style, so I gave her a small scarf which you can put on your wrist, or you can put it on your neck, and it's a stylish one. And she loved the idea. She took it, and I was like, you know what? Actually, you're making me feel good, because one of my dreams was to be an actor, and I always kind of hide it. I never wanted to accept because it's out of my reach. And she was like, what are you talking about? You can do it. And I'm like, I'm 32. That was 3 years ago. I don't think it's still feasible. It's too late. And she said, I'm 36, and I started 2 years ago. So I didn't start later than you. And you're handsome, you want to do it, just go for it. So I quit. And when I went back to Paris, it was COVID.
And boom!
Yeah. And after the whole process of making it happen to the US, I started taking some acting class in New York, but because of visa reason, I couldn't stay in the US. Plus, the COVID happened, so I took it again as an opportunity instead of an obstacle. And I was like, if I have to go back to France, then why don't you just start a new school and start a new job, learn a new skill? So it's been now 2 years that I'm taking intensive class as an actor. I still give some consulting jobs to fashion brands to help them with their retail business as a side business. But my main goal now is to go back to the US, but as an actor.
We all go back to the 15 years old Habib dream. 20 years later, we always go back to that. That's why I wanted to have you in the podcast, because there is that huge journey to get what you want, to all the growth, the learning that you have to go through, to at the end go back to your original dream, and you're still on it. So that's why I love that journey.
It's an even crazier dream, honestly, just because I'm not as good as I used to be when I was in retail. So I still have a lot to learn, but I guess it's because I was able to kind of fulfill one of my dreams that gives me still the drive. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's all the sacrifices that I'm doing today as a 35 young man. And I think, I'm giving myself another 5 years like I did before. I'm giving myself 5 years to kind of see if I can make it happen. And hopefully you'll see me for another podcast, but for another topic.
That's why I wanted to say, I hope we're going to be able to do a part 2 series, and like that you can tell us also about what does it mean to be a kind of an actor, and maybe what you say about the retail. I love where you were going about retail and the stage, and maybe talk a little bit more about for the young generation today, what what you have seen in them. You have trained some of them, because some of them, when you talk about retail, they want to be product manager, they want to be a stylist, and that's part of fashion, but it's also retail at the end of the day. That's what you say. It's the heart of the business. So what would be the advice for a young person wanting to work in fashion, and they start looking at retail? What would you tell them?
I'd say first, for anyone who wants to work in the luxury industry in general, or even in a high-end fashion, having a small experience in retail will help. So even if you don't want to become a retailer, you want to be in marketing, do a 6-month internship or just a 6-month contract part-time like I did, just to have that, small box checked, because it's important to understand who is the client. For those who wants to make it as a higher level, as an executive, the fastest way and the most interesting way would be retail. Because retail is being, again, able in a very, very early stage and a very short-term period to bring an impact on business. So if you try something in retail, the same day you can see the result. When you work on a strategy in marketing, it takes 20 sometimes 24 months to see if the strategy happened. So it's a good way to kind of test out. It's your lab. It's a lab. So retail, it's a good way to also learn your business, understand and kind of enhance your business mindset. Those who usually enjoy being in retail are those who has that entrepreneurship mindset. It's not everyone who has that energy. And there is one sentence that I kind of kept in mind at my first training at Dior. It was a head of a zone who said, in retail, energy is the name of the game. And I loved it because it's all about how much energy you're going to put in there. Because I had a lot of energy, it worked. But I don't think it's for everyone. But I think everyone should at least experience it in order for them to also see. But I saw more and more people who comes from the headquarters, from product or HR departments, or even marketing departments, and they want to come to retail because it gives you a status in the luxury industry, because you are able to basically, if you run a 50 or 100 million business, you're a CEO, even if it's a store. You're managing a company. So it takes courage, and it takes a lot of creativity to make sure you can have the shoulder for that, because it's a big job. It's a big responsibility. The more you manage business volume, the higher your position, and at least the importance of your role is critical. And I think retail can give you that. And if you like to travel, it's one of the best way.
It's true. So really great advice about like, yeah, you become the CEO of your store, your department, and you really see the impact every day. Every day it's a new day to kind of experiment, try, and see the results. So it's a really good advice. So Habib, what can we wish for you in the next future? What would be something that you hope to achieve?
I guess good luck. That would be it, because it takes a lot of luck to get where I want to go. I think what I learned from my experience as a retailer, it's that everyday challenge. You got to achieve every day a new challenge. Kept me going, and I think when you are a good retailer, you can take any challenge. You can take over any challenge in life. And the new one that I'm taking now, and I'm going through it, I'm actually going with that retail strategy to make it happen. So how to be creative, how to find a way to get there, and if I need to sell cookware again, I'll go to the airport to help other people to get to the plane. I'll do it, because there is a goal behind it, and I think dreaming is important. It's not about. I had a very interesting conversation with a student who is 74 years old in my school. He's the age of my father, and he told me, Habib, but I don't understand. Your life was kind of all set. So why would you take all those risks to start a new job? And I was like, it's not because your position is all set that means your happiness is all set. So you can always set up your life to be comfortable. But if you're not happy, why would you put all that effort just to be set and all set? No, I think you deserve more than that. Life is too short, so if you don't be afraid to try, and try again and fail, and it will happen. Eventually, it happens.
Trust the process.
Yeah.
So I think
Denzel,
that's the kind of yeah.
I'm going to add one thing. Denzel Washington used to say, if you hang around long enough around the barbershop, sooner or later, you're going to end up having a haircut. And I think
A haircut.
that's how I processed my whole retail career. It's just stick around, and keep asking until eventually it happens.
I love it. So trust the process. Stick around your dream. Keep the creativity and the drive, and but keep an eye on what makes you happy and make you move. Even if you're comfortable, and don't hesitate to kind of get out of your comfort zone at any moment of your life. I think it's a good way to summarize your entire journey, and I wish you all the best luck and the drive and the motivation and the process on your new endeavor. And I hope we're going to be able to do a part two one day, when you're going to be able to tell us a little bit more about like this new journey and what it brings you.
Merci Lucas. Bientôt.
Did I not say that you were in for a treat? I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as me. Personally, even though I knew most of the steps of his career, I was still wondering, how the hell is he going to pull that one off? The part that touched me the most And you might not be able to sense it from listening. It's all the hard work on himself that Habib has done. I cannot imagine the doubts and the mental toughness needed to let go of one's career in order to fulfill one's true calling. All of that in the middle of a pandemic and with no guarantee that except his belief in himself and his skills. So what are the key learnings from this conversation? 1. Never give up. Find a way even when everything seems impossible. Talk to people, ask meetings, write email, make your case, and no matter what, keep pushing. 2. Be ambitious and dream big. However, don't be arrogant and always lead the team by example. Learn from others, understand their needs, and see how you can bring them value. 3. Define a career strategy. Aim for something and make a plan to achieve it. You learn more along the way, even if you are wrong, than doing nothing trying to come up with the perfect objective. A career is built by doing, not by planning. If you are still here, thank you so much for tuning in. I know how much your time is valuable. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. This is the most efficient way to help us grow and entice people to listen to the show. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. In the next episode, I will receive Celia Nemasoa. It will be our first French episode. So if you are learning French and want to work in France, give it a try. If not, just stay with us. The episode after this one will be in English. Celia possesses the same kind of drive than Habib, but her aim is more focused on image production than retail. Celia is what we can call a hustler. She has done already so much for such a young age. So if you want to know how to go from hustler to image storyteller for one of the most legendary French fashion houses, stay tuned for our next episode. Until next time, I wish you a wonderful day.